Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our Eye on Asia webinar series. Before we start, please allow us to run through some housekeeping to ensure that everyone enjoy this session. Once our program starts, you'll be muted with your video function off. These are the sample screens on how chat and Q&A functions will look like on your screen. Tap on the three dots and you should see a text box appear. And to turn to the presentation slide or speaker video view, click close at the top left corner of your screen. Please pose your questions using the Q&A function, which we will address during the Q&A segment after the speaker's presentation. Now, to help us understand our audience profile, here are two questions, and please select and submit them. All right. I guess we can see the results from our polls. We have a lot of working professionals from the private sector here for question 1. And for question 2, well, a lot of you are here to learn more about ASEAN countries' culture. Well, here we are, the breakdown of our audience profiles this evening, and I hope that this data that we just gathered will be useful for our speakers in one way or another to making tonight's webinar an engaging and a meaningful one. So we are glad to know that we have about 100 participants joining us this evening. And let's go to tonight's topic. So this evening's topic is Myanmar Venture Stories and Opportunities Post-COVID-19. And we are happy to have Michelle Leong and her 3 speakers, Lester Chua, Chua Tian Hao, and Teo Chen Han. They will share their battleground stories and candid perspectives on venturing into Myanmar, adapting to a challenging new environment, and finding success and purpose. Michelle is the founder of the ASEAN Living Room and has a great passion for mentoring and pioneering businesses with social impact in developing communities. In addition, she is committed to connecting entrepreneurs across ASEAN to facilitate cross-border collaborations. Lester is a partner at Raja & Tan and has been working in Myanmar since 2016. He oversees the disputes practice at Raja & Tan's Myanmar office and advises clients on various aspects of their investments in Myanmar, including setting up businesses, employment, regulatory compliance, and licensing. Based in Myanmar for the past 7 years, Tian Hao is currently the business development partner at Quantum HR. He also oversees the operations at Ocha Bubble Tea, which has 13 outlets across Myanmar. Chen Han is the director at Chryslite and previously worked for Morgan Stanley in investment banking with a focus on equity capital markets. He joined his family's business in Myanmar at the beginning of 2019 and now manages 4 main portfolios, namely e-government, lighting, properties, and hospitality. Focusing on ASEAN countries, China and India, Eye on Asia is a collaborative effort by the National Library Singapore with partners to provide resources for Singaporeans who wish to find out more about the region and explore internationalization opportunities abroad. The ASEAN Living Room is a platform where it aims to bring together social activators from around the region to participate in dialogues, to promote knowledge exchange, and to curate ideas for cross-border collaborations. The intention is to have every ASEAN member state represented. I will now pass the session to Michelle and her speakers. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I just want to welcome everyone to tonight's event. My name is Michelle. As Ashif has introduced me, I run the ASEAN Living Room. Basically, it's a program where we just simply bring friends together and talk. And we've got this great partnership going on with National Library, where once a year, I bring my friends into the living room space and just talk about our experiences. So today we are going to talk about Myanmar. And these are 3 Singaporean friends whom I went all the way to Myanmar to get to meet. So I'll let them introduce themselves. We'll start with Lester, Tian Hao, and then Chen Han, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Hi everyone, hi Michelle. Yeah, just a brief introduction about myself. Apart from what was already shared earlier on, I started practice as a lawyer back in 2010. So for about 5 or 6 years, I was working in Singapore. And then the opportunity came to go to Myanmar on a secondment So at first it was a 2-month secondment, and then at the end of the 2 months, I enjoyed it quite a lot, and the firm was also looking for someone to be up there for the longer term. And so we discussed, and I signed up for a further 2 to 3 year stint in Myanmar. I was there from 2016 to 2019. And currently, I'm back in Singapore. But as part of the Singapore-based Myanmar practice, we would make regular trips up to Yangon for work. Except that now, because of COVID, nobody really can travel. So, yeah, that's my life.
Hi everyone. So I am Tian Hao. As Michelle and also the MC has introduced, I'm currently doing my own business. One is a HR business called Quantum HR. Another is everyone's favorite bubble tea. Yeah, but it's our own brand. Just a short, brief history of myself. So 7 years ago, I was working in the corporate sector management consultancy. I got bored with life. So someone asked me to go to Myanmar. So I came here, I take a look, and I mean, to put it in a very cliche way, I actually fell in love with this place. So on a personal basis, so I thought I'll just come relocate here, get a job, and figure how things will go. So I get to enjoy more and more. And after 5 years here, I decided to continue staying here and started my 2 businesses. So I am currently still in Myanmar. Yeah, so unlike most of you, me and Zhen Han, we are still based in Myanmar. Something interesting, I mean, yeah, been very interesting compared to, I think, the situation elsewhere.
So I'm Zhen Han, and I am part of the Chris Light Group. Our group is basically a joint venture between Singapore and Myanmar. I think this year we've been here for quite a while. So I think this year is 27 years, I think. Personally, I moved to Yangon 2 years ago. Also, I think similar to Lester and Tian Hao, my previous understanding of the country was not the best, I think. But I think over the past few years, I looked at the country, I saw that there are opportunities, if you put it that way. And I made a move here in early 2019. So like both of them, I think I'm based here full-time. Previously, pre-COVID, right? I think I'll go back once every 2 months, 3 months. But right now, I'm still stuck here, I would say. But hopefully for Chinese New Year, I'll be taking a flight back end of this month. Thanks.
Yeah, when you take a flight back, we will have coffee with Lester, and then Tian Hao will zoom in.
Can, definitely.
Anyway, yeah, I can recap for everyone again. So Lester and I came back to Singapore. We were both in Myanmar. All of us were in Myanmar. We were in Myanmar up to the point where SHN notice was issued. And then I think basically all the Singaporeans had to make a quick decision whether or not to come back. So Lester and I came back because we also have businesses in Singapore. And Tian Hao and Zhen Han decided to stay on and bond with the other Singaporeans who were also there. And they have been there since, I think haven't been back to Singapore for more than a year, right?
Yep, 1 year. The last time I was back was February for last year, Chinese New Year.
So can you share with us what you love about the Myanmar culture? What you love about being there?
Oh, that's an interesting question. It's very refreshing. I mean, I came from the corporate world, and I think in Singapore, we all been taught one direction where we have to try and get a good result, and then after get a good job. So, and the culture is pretty much, that's the way that I grew up in. But so when I first came to Myanmar, honestly, once again, very cliche, the people are very nice. Okay, but this was back in 2013 when Myanmar was just opening up and people were saying that this is the new golden last frontier of the world. So people were really nice. So really, really one of the reasons I stay on is really because it's a very refreshing change. Yeah, people are very direct, very nice. And that's one thing. And it's just a refreshing change. Well, in Singapore, maybe I like the painful way. So in Singapore, everything is very comfortable. Everything is set there for you. In Myanmar now, especially in 2013, a lot of things that we take for granted in Singapore is not available here. Yeah, I mean, even now, the house that I stay in, like we expect, in Singapore, we expect that when you switch on the water must come out from the tap and it must be clean. But over here, even with my current house, I need to understand why it's something called pressure pump. Yeah, without which I cannot use the water to shower, and I need to know why it's water filter. And so I get a lot of life experience that my parents said they got in kampong back in their own days. So that's why I think it's also a bit of, I've always been a very, someone like adventure and someone like thrill. So I guess sometimes some of this painting that also attract me, the experience of life. And of course, the people and the culture.
Zhenhan, you can answer one of these questions from the audience. Did you experience any cultural shocks? How was it like integrating into Myanmar?
100%. I think if you talk about living and working in a different country, I think Myanmar is not so different from many of the other, if you say, Asian countries or even outside Asia. I think like what Tian Hao said, things we expect or things that we are so used to that we don't typically think of. I think those are obstacles we see here. But overall, I agree with Tian Hao. I think the people here are very nice. I think the country, you can see in the last few years, has opened up so much. And I think they are generally very welcoming to foreigners, to people living here, to tourists. But of course, definitely getting used to the language, getting used to how things are done will take some time.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your Burmese now?
I went to the line and gave a higher number, but I'll give it
2?
1.5, 1.5.
1.5. Lester and Tian Hao.
Not for lack of effort, actually. I've been trying, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I would say 1.5 as well.
No.
It's a difficult language to learn.
Okay,
But why did you decide to pick up the language? I know Tian Hao also has, basically all of you have learned the language.
Okay, maybe just a quick one for myself. I thought since I'm going to be here for 4 years, right, it's good to learn a bit of the local language. It's a good chance, right, when you're in a particular country, that's the best chance to learn something. All your street signs, your bus signs, just everything can be done in the local language. So it was my best chance to learn. Unfortunately, I think there is a bit of a gap in the teaching methodologies. So, for example, just the English spelling, right, of a Myanmar word, depending on which school you came from, the English spelling could be like in 3 different ways, right, and 3 very different ways. So I don't think there's as much standardization, and that also makes study of the language a bit more difficult.
Tian Hao, do you think it has helped you with your business learning the language?
For me, the reason I learned, there was 2. One is exactly what Lester said. It may help since we are here. It's better to learn the language for personal life. And I mean, for me, I like to take road trip, driving myself. So like what Lester said, it's good to, at least if I understand the sign, at least the basic things. But number 2 was more for necessity, because I'm currently in F&B. And F&B, when most of the waiter and waitress and service crew, most of them are not able to speak English. And also we can't afford too many people who can speak English. So initially I rely on a couple of people for translation, and I figured that a lot of things was lost in translation. So there was a choice of no choice, basically, for me. It was much better that I pick up the language and so that I can communicate directly with them, expressing the real, not just what is being said, but also the feeling of it.
Oh, so the language comes with emotions as well?
Yeah, it actually comes with emotion. Even the way to say it, like over here, the longer the sentence, the more polite it is. So no matter how angry I am, I have to make the sentence really long so it doesn't come across as too fierce to them.
Okay, cool. Maybe you guys can share one instance in which you interacted with a local that taught you also, firstly, about the difference between the Singapore and the Burmese work culture, and also how you learn to appreciate a different way of working.
Okay, maybe I'll start first. And what I would like to share, or what comes to mind, is the usual experience close to what the Burmese have in terms of a national holiday around April called Tinjan. That's a water festival, and typically, this is the time when everybody just goes crazy. They want to spend the time enjoying themselves. They can't wait for it to start. The official holiday may be on, let's say, the 15th of April, but by the 13th or the 12th, everyone's minds are just on the festival, and that's where they celebrate, right? So I guess maybe coming from Singapore, it's just not so normal. So you think, hey, it's going to be a holiday. Let's finish up all the work first,
Yeah.
and then let's go for the holiday. But I think 1 or 2 days before the holiday starts, everybody has just switched off, and that's kind of a bit of a rude awakening, because you feel like as a foreigner you're like the only one who feels like the work must be finished,
Yes.
and everyone else in the country has switched off. Like your helper at home decided not to come because it's Tinjan. Your bosses decided to leave early because it's Tinjan. You go to your usual restaurant, and they are also off because it's Tinjan.
Yeah.
Just nothing else works. But that kind of teaches you a bit, right? Because I think we are very strong on our work ethic. But maybe sometimes we don't know enough how to just switch off and enjoy. And I think that's something I've learned to appreciate about being in the country. When it's time to switch off and enjoy it, you just do it, right? And that's how you get to know the locals better. And that's how you also learn a different way of living.
Thank you. Zhen Han Tian, how do you have any stories to share?
I think maybe I'll go first. I think the point on the language, right, which Tian Hao and Lester mentioned, it's very real, right? If you talk about the sentence structure, how you deliver the words you use, and even the length of what you say, I think that's something which it took some time for me to figure out also. I think by and large they understand, right? You're a foreigner, you do not have experience in this, and of course you can be very direct in saying some things. But I think even for the locals themselves, I think it's something which is quite important to watch. So even written language, if you talk about written language in Myanmar, firstly, it's very difficult. To me, it looks like circles.
It's just circles.
I'm still in the process of trying to understand the structure, but written language on papers for formal letters between companies or the government is written in a very, very different way from spoken language, and drastically different, I would say. So I think those are things which, again, we have to be mindful of. And definitely, I think being here, knowing the language would help you understand like the subtleties, understand what they're actually thinking, and you can bond more also, I think.
For me, in terms of the culture-wise, I was quite lucky. Like in my first job, when I first arrived in Myanmar, so one of my colleagues is actually a very nice old man, or they call Ule, who actually worked in Singapore before. So he's actually my colleague, but he sort of acted as sort of my mentor. So he really shared with me, brought me out, shared with me genuinely about all the differences between Myanmar and other country. And honestly, I think we've been repeating the point, right? So I think Lester and Zhen Han, really about their culture. I mean, every country have their own different culture. Yeah, that one is for sure. And of course, Myanmar have their own unique culture because of their history, their background. So a lot of time is instead of coming in and then immediately trying to enforce our thinking on like, oh, this is how Singapore do, this is what they should do. So instead, I think the more important at the beginning is to try and understand the culture, internalize first, understand why they do it, instead of just imposing that this is how they should do it. Yeah, so I guess so I was glad to have that mentor, but at the same time, I think there's a very important attitude. Yeah, especially in Myanmar, where some, like what both of them have mentioned, some of the work culture are quite drastically different from, for example, Raffles Place CBD. Yeah, it's nearly extreme. Yeah, but they have their own way, they have their own reason for it. So it's not understanding it and then going with the flow.
Going with the flow. That's something Singaporeans definitely need to adapt to. You kind of answered my next question, but the next question was, what advice would you give to Singaporeans who are going into Myanmar for the first time?
Just make a lot of local friends. I think they help to keep you out of trouble. I think what I usually suggest to people is also to, apart from being in Yangon, to also do some traveling. Let's say to other cities, to Mandalay, to some of the other sub cities in Yangon, in Myanmar. And then you get to understand a bit more about the background and the culture. So you realize that the people that you're dealing with are not exactly homogeneous. I think in Singapore, we know a bit of that because we are a multiracial society. But in Yangon, it is even more pronounced. And you cannot assume that all of them share a very strong local Myanmar identity. You have people from different cities, different towns, different ethnic groups. Their culture and background may be completely different. And it's worth paying a bit more attention to that. And I think it's also a general question. Depending on what you are in Yangon to do, if you're there to start a business, then maybe one key advice that we always give is that you have to pay attention to what the laws say, but you also have to be very keenly aware of what the practice is, because sometimes the practice may be a bit different from what the laws actually say. Another just very, very obvious difference is that their laws are in different languages, right? So half the laws are in English, half the laws may be in Myanmar language, and sometimes the translations are not even the most precise. So, these are nuances that we don't appreciate coming from Singapore because, we have all our laws in the same language, and, in general, what the law says on paper is how it would be applied to a given situation. Yeah, that's all for me.
Okay, Zhenhan, any advice? Make friends? Nowhere to drink?
Those two, definitely.
Okay.
I think like what Lester said, right? Finding a good partner here. I think if you talk about a local partner who obviously, if you have trust, knows how to navigate the environment.
Yeah.
Or even with, even if you talk about the Singaporean community here, right? I think there's a very active association called the Singapore Association of Myanmar. Most Singaporeans, I think, are part of that association. And many of them have been here for a decade, 2 decades. So I think these are people who have lived here for a long time, that understand, and are also either working for a company or pursuing their own businesses. I think Lester mentioned about the laws, right? And I think that's something probably that keeps him busy all the time. But it's a true fact as well, because a lot of the laws were written long time ago. So a lot of the laws were written decades ago under a different situation, a different environment. And a lot of these are now, in the past few years, constantly being updated. But it's very, very hard to keep track. It's even for ourselves, right? That's why we work with lawyers, we work with consultants to try to understand what is being updated, which ones are now valid, which ones are going to change.
Yeah.
So overall, I think that points to, I think one of the difficulties is that it points to a lack of information. So in Singapore, or even other countries, we can just Google, right? If there's something we're not sure, we Google online, we give a few calls to some friends, we can get the information here. But here, it's not a simple Google search. Even if it's in Myanmar, it could be outdated. There's no depository that shows everything clearly. And so having a good partner, if you talk about whether it's lawyers, consultants, local businesses, I think that's crucial if you're looking to come in that way.
Okay, so I look forward to having more Singaporeans there. Eventually, when we can fly. I think now we're going to move into the hot topic, which everyone, or a lot of people did wait for. How was your business affected by COVID? And how have you adapted? Or maybe you just take the first one first. How was your business affected?
I have two. One is the HR. So for us, HR, okay, recruitment definitely affected. Payroll, we also do something called payroll admin support. That one thankfully still continue, because that one is not something that depends on their business, our client business. That one actually is something that is a staple. So, but of course, my second business, the F&B, is what is much more volatile. Yeah, so we were lucky in the way, and I also read this news in Singapore that bubble tea is surprisingly a more inelastic demand. Yeah, so during the COVID, so people will still want it. And thankfully, Foodpanda arrived earlier this year. So we were thankfully still able to do quite okay with delivery. And there's also a reason that because our price point is generally lower than the international franchisee. So it was still affordable. So even if the people were worried about their income, they are still able to afford our brand. So definitely, I mean, in terms of the impact, negative impact, all our shopping center stores, drastic drop in the walk-in customer. Yeah, but thankfully on the other side, we have some that is a standalone. So that one actually saw an increase in customer because what people do is they just go in, order, and they immediately come outside and wait for it. Yeah, to outdoor to wait for the drink. And Foodpanda or and GrabFood, so all the delivery platform actually helps a bit. So to sum it up, we were affected, but thankfully it was still okay. And we also saw it as an opportunity because of this COVID. There was a lot of retail space was available, and the rental was actually the tenant finally can have a bit of negotiation power. So we actually looking and we expanded a small bit, and we also looking more for more opportunity.
Okay, thank you. In fact, actually, when I was on Facebook, I was seeing every day Tian Hao is updating us on new menu items, and I know Lester was hoping very much to continue being in Myanmar to enjoy some of these. But it's okay. I'm sure Zhen Han managed to get some bubble tea. But Zhen Han, how was it for your business?
To be honest, right, some of our quite a number of our company staff, I see them with the Hejo bubble tea from Tian Hao.
You get a corporate discount after this.
Right, a corporate discount. I'll drop you a text later.
Sure.
For the business, right, of course, across the board, it's been impacted a lot, right? I think Myanmar is not very different from many other countries. I think, in fact, I could say it's even worse because we do not get, or at least even local companies, they do not get the same government support as we are lucky to have in Singapore. So on our side, the hospitality one, of course, that's shut. E-government side, because not only because of the COVID situation, but I think last year there was the second election. So I think things slowed down as well. On the construction side, it stopped and start, right? I think the past few months, we are seeing more proper regulations, how to deal with this current situation. And I think that it will move forward in a way where the situation will not change, right? I think in the next 1 year. I think this overall situation, I think we can have, many people have different views, but I think overall for the construction sector, we need to adjust to a new normal.
Yeah.
So, but still being optimistic, I think, as with yourself, Lester and Tian Hao. And yeah, hopefully with things moving on, I think 2021 hopefully will be better.
My friend did say when you leave entrepreneurs to shake leg, right, it's actually quite dangerous. Every time shake leg means create new idea. Yeah, but anyway, Lester, for you, how has COVID affected your working relationship from Singapore?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for one, I haven't been able to fly since March last year, so I think that's affected us quite a bit. But I would say we were already expecting quite a slow year last year because of the elections actually, and then that got compounded with COVID. But given the projections, the not so good projections, actually last year was a pretty okay year. For a number of reasons, I think there was still a lot of commercial activity going on in the lead up to the elections. So I think people were buying and selling businesses, and I think also, given a lot of the changes in the regulations, that also resulted in a lot of inquiries for us. I mean, I guess the good thing is that we are service providers, so we are in a sense less directly affected. But I would like to say that actually, apart from how good or bad the businesses were impacted, actually what's been very interesting last year was that there's been quite a big change in the way people do business. And so, give for example the use of technology, and there are clients that in the past. Maybe Myanmar government or Myanmar clients that you would never have expected would want to do a video call with you. right?
Yeah.
Each time they call for you, it's a physical meeting. You fly over, you meet them. But in just a matter of months, you have these same people saying, oh, let's do a Zoom call, let's do a Microsoft Teams. Then if you tell them, let's do a Zoom, they will tell you, oh, I think it's not so secure. Maybe let's do something else. And that's how fast the country has learned. And I think the way people are doing business in the country will change quite a bit as a result of COVID. You have a lot of businesses that used to always require a physical office. And now, because of COVID, they were forced to adapt to having a sizable part of their employees work from home. And of course, it takes a while to get all of that going. But now they can actually do it, right?
Yeah.
And that might actually become a lot more normal in the way people do business in Myanmar, when you wouldn't have expected that in March or February last year. So it's very interesting times. I think there's a lot of businesses that have been affected, but at the same time, a lot of new opportunities that have come up because of the change in the way people are doing things.
Would you like to elaborate on some of these opportunities?
Well, I mean, you meet me for coffee. I'll share with you some of them.
Sure.
No, but I think a lot of opportunities lie in maybe the education space. You know, for example, I think over the course of last year, what I've observed is that a lot of students actually they couldn't go to school because of COVID, and they were actually trying to find resources online to do their learning or to substitute their learning with something they could learn online. You know, they were doing like sewing classes and, you know, all kinds of things just to use their time well. And that shows me that people in Myanmar, they're really into education, right? And I think that's one thing, that one area. I mean, of course, there's a number of other areas depending on what your particular interest is.
Yeah, Tianhan, any opportunities you think Singaporeans can look at if they have the time?
I personally, I'm still in F&B, so a lot of my day-to-day thinking is on F&B. One thing, I mean, I will just talk more about F&B, then maybe Zhen Han can share more about the B2B business where he's more experienced on that. For F&B and retail, like what I mentioned just now, there is a lot of opportunity in terms of retail space. So because a lot of the businesses that was doing okay, but because of this, they all closed. So actually a lot of good space are available now. Also because some of the places the rental is a bit cheaper, but also on a slightly more, a bit more strategic level. So because of this COVID, because I mean, generally, Myanmar is a developing country. So before COVID, anything to do with technology and app, it would take slower to adapt. But because of COVID, a lot of the local people were sort of forced to try out food delivery services because that's the only way that they could. That was the only people that was going outside the home. So that was the only way they could order a lot of their food. So because of that, this whole, I think that one is quite similar to Singapore. So it's about building a retail business with online. I mean, to put it very generally. So for F&B, you'll be building a business, a F&B brand that rely a bit more on delivery services. So I mean, some changes that can happen, like for example, getting a very visible retail space is less important nowadays. So instead of save that rental amount and then use that safe rental amount to be paying the delivery commission. Rather than trying to get a very prominent space, paying high rental, and then after that still need to pay a delivery commission to a delivery company. I mean, of course, it hasn't been a very smooth year, but at the same time, in Myanmar, some of the trends are changing. So for us, it's more developing businesses that, for example, another way is our new shop that is standalone must always be facing main road because during the lockdown, all the small lane got locked down. So no one can enter. Whereas main road, they were not able to lock down. So our new shop are all located on main road that we guess that they are not able to lock down the main road. So it's more of following, for F&B, it's more following the trend and identifying. So like we're also going to look at one another new brand that, like what I mentioned, hopefully because retail space open up, plus relying on delivery. In terms of packaging, so we plan this new brand, we think about how to package when delivery, how to make sure that people who eat it half an hour and 45 minutes after we prepare still get a good taste. So it's a bit of change thinking. That's on my side.
So just now, Lester mentioned about, he sees the people learning and adapting more to Zoom meetings, right? But that's because Lester's in Singapore, so people have no choice, right? They have to interact with him online. For Zhen Han, do you find that you can get away with more Zoom meetings, or you still have to meet people in person?
Last year, Yangon went through 2 lockdowns, and actually, I think we're still in a lockdown. Actually, I'm not too sure. So, so anyway, I would say 90% or 95% of companies shifted everything online, right? At least for those that can shift. Right now, it's, I would say 50-50. But I think if we talk about the uptick in technology, right, it's the same. It's the same as Singapore, it's the same as any other country. This pandemic or this situation has forced everyone to really have to adapt. And I think, or if not, there's no choice, right? You have to. So I think by and large, most businesses have or are trying to adapt. If specifically on your questions, right, on which industries, I think the usual ones, you talk about healthcare, you talk about education, and maybe Myanmar agriculture as well.
Agriculture is a big one.
Industries, actually, I personally do think there are opportunities here. Because I think this is a country that has a lot of potential. And I think one thing that could help us also is that if you talk about Singapore Inc., the brand of Singapore, it's very well recognized, it's very well received, and generally the impression of Singapore companies, Singapore employees, even the big conglomerates here is very good. So I do think that even from Singapore's perspective, right, we need to we make best friends with all our neighbors and everything. I think that has helped a lot. And I do think that puts at least Singapore companies in a better position. You want to venture in here. I think whichever the industry, honestly.
You want to quickly clarify just now when you said you're not sure if you're still in lockdown?
So on that point.
Okay, we're all laughing.
because I think the past few months, the announcements are very, okay, I won't say it's unclear, but we don't know what to expect, right? So I think every week or every 2 weeks, sometimes you get a announcement the night before that the next day is going to be on lockdown. But actually, to clarify, I do think we're on a lockdown. I do think we are. So I'm staying in, and if I'm not wrong, we still are. Yes.
Okay.
On the record, yes, we are.
Okay. Tian, how you agree?
It's a lockdown, but over here it's called stay home. Yeah, it's called stay home, and I think the ambiguity come when it's a lot. They just continue to extend the original law, and on some parts, they close all the popular parks. Yeah, so they close down the popular parks. So that's part of the sort of stay home. But if you go to a shopping center, for example, today is a public holiday here. So you go to a shopping center, honestly, you like what Zhen Han said, that's why Zhen Han is ambiguous. Like you go to the shopping center today, you do not get a sense that it's a lockdown at all. Yeah, there's totally no sense. The crowd over there, because there is no, put it on the other way, there is no enforcement action taken against anyone who step out of the house to just for general casual thing.
So no $300 for lack of mask.
Lack of mask. Okay, mask wise, people wear it when they go outside. So that one, the civil duty thing is very, very strong. So people will wear it. But in terms of going out, there's no enforcement action for going out. Although technically, it's like what Zhen Han says, it's actually lockdown. Everyone is supposed to stay at home unless you have essential activity. But if you go to shopping center today, everyone is there. Yeah, with their boyfriend, friend, girlfriend, everyone.
In short, we are saying that they are social creatures. Yeah, I think they just enjoy going out to connect in person. But definitely COVID has taught them also the importance of being connected online. So basically what I was highlighting here was a bit of the lack of information or access to information. And it's also something that one of our attendees actually mentioned, that he finds it hard to obtain statistics or information about doing business in Myanmar or general stats, right? So how do you guys get about it, like to find out more information if you can't just access information online?
Maybe I can start.
Yeah.
Firstly, I think a lot of information gets shared on Myanmar language mediums. So that's one good source for information. Also, I think if you're familiar with Myanmar, a lot of information gets shared on Facebook.
Yes.
That's another rich source of information. But also, I think if you want to find out something official, you need to know who to ask. So that there are regulatory authorities you can go and do a consultation. I think unfortunately, unlike other countries, there's not as much studies being done, right?
Yep.
In Myanmar. But there are still some studies that have been done, and so if you find out about these sources, you could contact them to find out what the results were. I think a couple of years ago there was a population census done by the World Health Organization, and just giving for example, and then some other institutes might actually be doing some studies, but maybe it's not so well known.
Anyone else? How do you find out more? Like, how do you get maybe economic data or information?
I would say I'm more of a skeptic, and I'm more of a skeptic compared to Lester. The reason why information is not online is really because there is a lack of data in Myanmar. That is the key fundamental. There is actually a lack of data collected, whether by government or individual. There's not really a lot of data. I mean, just an example, the population census that Lester mentioned about. So the last census, honestly, that one really can believe. But the thing is, actually, that census cut away nearly 6 or 8 million of the population. Yeah, that particular census, because for a long time there was no data. So
Undocumented law in Philippines, we call them undocumented.
exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of things, and so that's why I'm saying I'm more of a skeptic. Being here, getting a sense of how things, for me, I think that's important. Or another way is like what Zhen Han mentioned, getting a good partner. Identify a good partner who has a good business sense. Yeah, that's why I'm using the word sense again. So either it's you yourself getting the sense, or you're getting a good business partner who is trustable and who has an understanding of the business sense. And since Lester is here, understanding of business sense plus understanding of the law and practice, I think nothing can replace that. Yeah, it's much more effective than trying to go online and finding data.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this one I would just add in a bit because out of the three of them, or the four of us, I'm the one who was in Yangon for the shortest period of time. I was there where all of them were already comfortable in their own. I think they have all settled into Myanmar. I came from Philippines. I was there for 5 years, and then I decided that I wanted to expand into Myanmar. So this thing about not having enough information online, I think for me, it's always about walking the ground, like really going there, living, staying there, and then interacting with the locals. Like, because there are some things that you just can't find online. You have to experience for yourself, and also how it plays off against your own culture, especially when we come from Singapore going into a very different space.
I think maybe I'll just answer the last question, right? So for those of us who may not be able to uproot ourselves, I think, then maybe on the export sector, I think Lester or Tien Hao mentioned that if you do any business here, it's quite crucial, which I believe as well, that you are on the ground. Also, if you look at all the PE funds or the VC funds, there are not many, right? We talk about all these opportunities, but at the same time, we do not see a lot of investment funds there are a few coming up, and I think they're doing quite well. But I think the ones that have done well are the ones that have people on the ground. They're consulting the businesses, they are active, and they play active role instead of just passively investing. So if you are not able to uproot yourself, I think export maybe. The agriculture sector here is huge. I think it will take a few more years for the infrastructure to get up and running. But if it aligns to Singapore's trying to be diversification of food supply, I do think Myanmar is one of those regions where it's still not fully utilized, but from the agriculture's perspective that we are working with them.
And then for the last burning question, how soon do you think there can be ease of travel? how can like foreigners entering Myanmar? Okay, let's say assuming Singapore opens up our borders, given the ground situation in Myanmar, how fast do you think we can get back to traveling?
Okay, maybe I'll start first. I think that actually, okay, there's two separate factors, right? One is that I think the COVID situation is still quite a concern, and it's a bit hard to control. So that suggests that it will be the same for quite a while. And also in terms of vaccinations, it doesn't look like it's going to be a very fast thing for Myanmar, right, to get the country vaccinated. So it does seem like it's at least going to be, to the end of the year or something. However, I also do think that there is a lot of pressure on the part of the government because where local businesses are suffering, there will be a lot of pressure being placed on the government to open its borders. So I think that we might be surprised at how early Myanmar tries to open up its borders. So it might be somewhere maybe the middle of the year, and it might be because of the pressure to get the foreign investments in again. And it could be conditional, right? So it could be like, you have to take your vaccine, from your home country, and then you'll be allowed to go in, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Tian Hao, ready to travel?
Honestly, I'm waiting because for I think me and Zhen Han, we know going back Singapore is not an issue. It's just be on a waiting list. But after you go back to Singapore, how to come back to Myanmar? So for me, I'm really still waiting for that. Everything is like what Lester has mentioned. I think everything is correct. Just that I think during this session we talked about ambiguity. So even for this, there was a bit of ambiguity on the ground. So first of all, in December, there was a very strong rumor, and there was also a sort of notice saying that actually international commercial flight will be able to start on 1st January. Yeah, so it got everyone very excited. But on the last few days of December, it sort of say that all the previous announcement will be continued, the previous restriction will continue. Yeah, and then just yesterday, I saw that now there is so all along we had relief flight, But yesterday I saw that now there is a special relief flight. So in the same advertisement, there was a relief flight and a special relief flight. So I'm not sure what does that mean.
It's to relieve the relief.
So yeah, so I like what Lester said. I think there is a pressure to open up, but at the same time, no country will be unilateral. So there's a lot of ways. I mean, this relief flight, especially relief flight by MAI, I think, or MNA, is yeah. So I'm getting interested. I'm hoping that really it will open up soon because I want to go back to Singapore, but at the same time, I know that I want to have a confidence that I can return back within a certain time frame.
So Chinese New Year, are we expecting you?
I'm waiting for the special relief flight.
Yeah, Zhen Han will be on that flight too. But Zhen Han, you're coming back, right?
Right now, possibly end of this month. So I think from Myanmar, when we go back, we still have to do 14 days, not stay home, hotel or hotel quarantine. So, but I think same with Lester and Tian Hao, right? I think we can only guess. I think a lot of things is really very hard to predict. So personally speaking, I hope that relief flights will be up and running soon. And I hope there are more bilateral, at least with Singapore, right, agreements on that front. But yeah, who knows? We will see day by day, I think.
Yeah, I think the best way is live by the day. I mean, that's the same way I handle my business. I mean, we do try to plan, but there are a lot of things that you can't predict, especially in the midst of COVID. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for your very honest answers. We are hoping that, more Singaporeans will join us in Myanmar one day, and we will have a party when there's more than 8. Okay, so I will hand the time back to NLB. Thank you so much for allowing us to partner with you on this, and we look forward to more talks.
Thank you, Michelle, Lester, Hao, and Zhen Han for your interesting stories and insightful sharing. We really appreciate the time which you have taken today to share your first-hand experiences and useful information with us. And we hope that everyone enjoyed the session and gained a deeper understanding of Myanmar. But before we officially end the session, may we invite you to scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the chat to the online survey form to help us improve our future programs. All right, once again, thank you, Michelle and speakers. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. We have come to the end of the program, and the next Eye on Asia webinar will be in March, so do look out for it. And do visit the Eye on Asia website to learn more about the initiative. So once again, have a good evening. Stay safe. Good night.